A Norfolk Navy reservist is the subject of an international manhunt after police found his wife's body in their apartment freezer in the Icon building downtown and discovered that he possibly had fled to Hong Kong. Lina Guerra was found dead a few days after she was reported missing in early February 2026. Police believe she was killed by her husband, David Varela. It's a stunning case that has so many questions left unanswered. Welcome to True Crime 757, where we dig deeper into the stories we put on TV. I'm John Sham, and I'm joined today by our investigative reporter, Margaret Kavanaugh, who's here to talk about this case. Now, Margaret, you learned a lot about this before it was kind of reportable. This is such a scary case and a troubling case. Can you tell us about what you've learned so far in the investigation?
Yeah, I mean, it was first came to me, someone called with a tip, a source of mine, and was like, hey, you know that missing girl from the Icon? Well, her body was actually found in the freezer in the apartment complex where they lived. Virginia State Police had sent out information saying she was missing and then, located. But when we're hearing that, I was like, whoa, this sounds like there's way more to it than what we're hearing.
And it sounds like the missing persons report was filed a few weeks after her family had last heard from her. And now her family is in Colombia, South America. Most of them don't speak English, so I know that, and I know you did speak to them at one point. When we did catch up with them, and we spoke with them through a translator, they gave us some more information kind of about the timeline. I just want to go through that timeline real quick. So on January 16th, that was the last time that Lina had contact with her family in Colombia. And she has a brother there, sister-in-law is the person that you spoke with. 2 weeks later, on January 31st, that was David, her husband's last contact with Guerra's family. He sent some text message to her that said that she was in prison for stealing, for shoplifting, and he even sent a photo that made it seem like she was wearing an orange jumpsuit. This is actually the photo behind us right here. But her family knew something was not right. So a few days later, on February 2nd, her brother files a missing persons report, and then that report makes it to Virginia State Police by February 5th, and that's when it gets sent out to media. That's when we find out about it. That's when we get the picture of Lina. That same day, the search warrant was executed at her apartment. So what did we learn about what happened on that day? And I know we learned it later, but what did we learn that day?
Yeah, so they were looking for Lina, and they went to the house to execute this search warrant because it seemed suspicious. Her family was very, very concerned because she talked to them all the time, like you said. So it was at that point when they were in the apartment that they then found her inside of the freezer on the February 5th.
Do we have any context? We don't really, other than that she was found in the freezer, we don't really have any. Is there any more information about that and how that? A lot of people have kind of commented about, how could somebody be put into a kitchen freezer? What else do we know about this? We
know she was a petite woman. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people that I've talked to, some of them not wanting to go on camera, but that live over there, have said that they don't know what their freezer looks like, but they know that the freezer in their apartment and several of the other apartments in the apartment complex are kind of small. So, it's really upsetting. Her family was absolutely devastated to hear that she had died in this way. And I know that the body was then sent over. It took a few days as they are trying to figure out, and the medical examiner is working on the body to try to determine exactly how she died. But that is the way that they found her, unfortunately, in the apartment where she had been living.
And so potentially she could have been in there for, an untold amount of time. We don't really know how long she could have been in that freezer, but we do know that they had to wait really for her body to thaw before they could do the autopsy, and they haven't shared the results of the autopsy that determine what the cause of death was. But we know that kind of delayed the information coming out a little bit.
Right, and so that's the whole question of these weeks leading up to what was going on. I mean, the family talked to her on January 16th. And then between those 2 weeks, David was sending them text messages, with the information that she had been arrested, the information that, he's so heartbroken that she's locked up in prison for shoplifting, and the family was like, what? This is crazy. Where, he's sending this picture and they're just trying to piece together what's going on, and I'm sure in their mind, like, what is this? This is crazy, but that period, we don't know exactly when this took place, or how, on what day, or how long, So that's all part of the police investigation, that they're trying to figure out that timeline of like the day of her death and then leading up to all these other things that went on.
But we do know on the same day that the search warrant was executed at the apartment, that records show that Varela was on a plane to Hong Kong.
The federal documents that we got just days and days after, but they outlined a timeline saying it said on or about February 5th, the day they executed the search warrant, the day the information was sent out, that he was on a flight to Hong Kong, and they used some kind of data to figure that out. I'm sure the records, and they're doing all kinds of things. But so, I mean, it's just to think about that. Police are at his apartment, and he's on a flight to Hong Kong. It's disturbing, and they want to find where this person is.
Yeah, but it was several days after that point before they kind of shared any updates with media. It was February 9th before we even got the information that the search was over and that her body was found. The next day it was ruled a homicide, and we knew information about Varela's potential whereabouts before that could be released. Why is that?
Well, I got information from several sources, and we did not want to release things that were going to jeopardize the investigation. So we had been in contact with law enforcement and others that are leading these things to say, we know this is the information that we're being told by multiple people, but there was concern with him leaving the country that he would Google information and see WTKR article, So we were trying to be extra cautious and extra conservative with the information, trying to work with law enforcement to say, hey, this is what we know. Is this going to jeopardize the situation? Like, we even, they sent out a missing persons thing, Virginia State Police, which they do. Frequently we'll get those, unfortunately, when people are missing. And then they just sent out another one that said located on it with no information about her. And we, Lauren Hope, that works on our desk, wrote to State Police and was like, has she been found safely? Because we didn't know, at this time. And then after that is when Norfolk Police had sent out more information saying, she had been discovered. The investigation is underway, but it was like her body's been discovered, but there was still at that point little information. They weren't releasing the aspect that she was in the freezer, he was in Hong Kong, stuff about the husband. So it all kind of like started trickling out more and more and more. And we did get a lot of information too from her family, making that contact with them in Colombia.
And we're going to talk. We're going to hear more about what her family had to say, because you did spend almost an hour, on a Zoom call with them. And again, you spoke to them through a translator. But real quick, before we go to our break, I just want to mention that on February 11th, it was when Guerra's death was ruled a homicide. The autopsy, again, as of this recording, is still pending. But we did also learn that NCIS, Naval and Criminal Investigative Services, working with Norfolk Police on this, because Varela is a Navy reservist. We know that Homeland Security is working with them on this, that the FBI is working with them on this, and that there have been arrest warrants issued for first-degree murder and for concealment of a body. So when we come back from this break, we're going to hear more from Guerra's family about the relationship between Guerra and her husband, and their feelings on what happened to their family members. So we'll touch more on that after we come back to this break.
Your world changed in seconds, not by choice. But now you get to choose who fights for you. At Corseland Law, we don't just handle cases like the other firms. We go to war to get our clients paid for their injuries. Personal injury, real people, real stakes. Let us carry the weight. Free consultation, fierce representation. Corseland Law, because this fight is personal.
He said the police took her because supposedly she stole clothes from a mall or shopping center. And that the same day, the 16th, they separated them and he didn't know anything else, that the police took her and he went home.
Welcome back to True Crime 757. We're talking with our investigative reporter, Margaret Kavanaugh, about the case of Lina Guerra and her husband, David Varela, who is the subject of an international manhunt as police look for him and believe that he may have killed Lina and put her body in the freezer in the apartment they lived at. So as part of our investigation, Margaret, you reached out to members of Guerra's family to learn more about learn more of what you could learn, right? You were the first to reach her sister-in-law, married to Guerra's brother. What did she tell you?
It was heartbreaking to talk. I mean, it's difficult because she didn't speak English and my Spanish is terrible, so we had the translator, so that makes it a little more difficult, but it was just so heartbreaking to talk to her. I found her. What was interesting is I went through and was looking at comments that people had posted on our social media back when we had posted when she was missing, and I saw in Spanish, and I Googled it and translated. Someone wrote, "This is my sister-in-law, please help find her." So that's how I tracked her down. Sometimes people find it interesting when we kind of explain because people are like, "How do you find?" Or people will be like, "How did you find me?"
Yeah.
And that's in this case how I found her. But she talked about their marriage. She said that he was extremely jealous. They said that Lina was not allowed to go to work, wasn't allowed to have friends. He wouldn't let her go to school. He didn't want her to leave the house.
He was obsessively jealous. He wouldn't let her work. He wouldn't let her have friends. He wouldn't let her study. She couldn't go out alone. He always had to be with her, even controlling her by phone calls, too.
They said that he was religious, but there had been also abuse in the relationship they believed was going on. But they also felt like Lina had always been somebody that was taking care of everybody else. And so she kind of, in certain ways, was trying to prevent them or protect them from knowing a lot of that stuff. But they did say that he had gotten violent with her. And it was just sad. She also has a brother in Miami, and he's the one that actually filed the missing persons report because they also speak on the regular, daily. She's constantly she was constantly in communication with her family. So they knew something was weird, and the shoplifting thing was just so out of character, they said, and they're like, this is just bizarre.
Yo hablé con él por llamada el 31 de enero. Hablamos por llamada.
I spoke with him on the phone on January 31st. He told me he was very depressed, hadn't eaten, that he was going to see Lina on Saturday, and he sent us a photo where he appeared and supposedly she appeared wearing prison clothes.
Y obviamente vimos que esa foto era falsa, o sea, se notaba. Y ya después de eso,
and we realized the photo was fake and edited. After the 31st, he stopped responding. Calls wouldn't go through, nothing. And the last thing we learned from authorities is that he went to Hong Kong.
They talked about the two of them and the text messages that he was sending, talking about being heartbroken and sad, and they just knew something was off right from the get-go with all of this.
Paola, the sister-in-law, she also shared some screenshots of text message exchanges that she had shared, that she had exchanged with David, kind of around this before Guerra's body was discovered. What did he say in those text messages?
He was explaining the situation, I guess, saying that she was sent to prison for 5 years for shoplifting, and that was giving a reason, why this picture, he sent them this picture of saying that it was her in prison and he was visiting her. We looked, there was no record of any arrest for shoplifting for her. They said this was not something, this was very, out of character for her for something like this. But the text messages was, I miss her, I'm crying, I can't live without her, I'm distraught, this is just so awful, when in fact, that was not what was going on.
Right, and again, so this is all going on, and we believe at some point around this time, he had fled, or left the country to potentially get away from what was going on here. Sometimes what gets lost in these horrible death investigations is the person that was, and that was something that you touched on when you spoke to the family. What did they say about the type of person Lina was? She
was a empathetic, loving, caring person.
Lina era el pilar de nuestra familia prácticamente.
Lina was the pillar of our family. She put others above herself. She was very loved, adventurous, hardworking, very humble. She had few friends, but everyone loved her because of her big heart.
Era muy noble de corazón, muy humilde, muy preocupada. O sea, ella siempre.
She always put other people's well-being before her own. She really protected the family. She was always there for us.
Muy pendiente, cuidaba mucho a su hermano, le protegía mucho la mente, las emociones, siempre en todos nuestros momentos estuvo ella para nosotros.
Some of her friends and her family said how much she loved. She had 3 dogs that she loved so much. You know, she loved those 3 dogs, and that people in the complex over there would see her with those dogs. I also spoke with a young man who went out with her frequently with her husband. They went out to different bars, or they'd hang out and play games at the apartment complex. And he said that he was shocked to hear what these accusations are. He did say that you could tell, like, he was protective of her, and that, and a bit, he didn't want to use the word controlling, but like there was an element of domination maybe when they were together, and like him being very protective of her, is what he said he witnessed. And they got together with other young people and, hanging out and going out in the downtown Norfolk area.
Que se haga justicia, que lo encuentren, que a este caso le pongan.
We want justice. We want them to find him. We want this case to get all the attention possible so it doesn't go unpunished. And because she was Colombian and Hispanic, we feel it won't be treated with the same importance. We want justice and results as soon as possible.
Y que nos den resultados y le pongan toda la atención a eso.
They also went into like how they met and how she got here. So the family said that back in 2015, she was working as a waitress down in Florida. He was a cook at that same restaurant. The two of them met. So that was like 11 years ago. And that's when he joined the military. He got into the Navy. And then that they had moved up here to Norfolk from Florida about 2 years ago. So they had been living at the Icon for about 2 years here in Norfolk, while he was then working as a reservist for the military, but she did not work. And her family said that she did not want to have children with David.
So now we believe Varela flew to Hong Kong, but we don't know where he is now. Investigators are still trying to find him, and we are going to talk more about the investigation into Varela's whereabouts after we come back from this break.
Your world changed in seconds, not by choice. But now you get to choose who fights for you. At Corseland Law, we don't just handle cases like the other firms. We go to war to get our clients paid for their injuries. Personal injury, real people, real stakes. Let us carry the weight. Free consultation, fierce representation. Corseland Law, because this fight is personal.
We are in partnership, my office, the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, with the Norfolk Police Department, and with Homeland Security Investigations, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, the Justice Department, and the State Department to work to arrest the suspect in this homicide. It's something that we have kept quiet for a while in the interest of not giving anybody the jump on us, but it's something that we've all been working on very actively.
Welcome back to True Crime 757. We're talking about the case of David Varela and the international manhunt after he's been accused of the first-degree murder of his wife, Lina Guerra, in Norfolk. So we know that authorities were able to track him to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is a part of China, but it has some special rules that are a little bit different than China. China does not have an extradition treaty with the United States, which means that if Varela does make it to China, or if he's already there, it will be very difficult for authorities here in the U.S. to get him back. They were hoping to capture him in Hong Kong because Hong Kong could extradite. What do we know about this investigation so far? You spoke to Ramin, Fatehi, the Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney. What did he tell you about this?
Yeah, he said this is very unusual. He said in his 19 plus years as being a state and federal prosecutor that this is only the second case where he's had to pull in Interpol. Now, Interpol works, he said, is an international clearinghouse for over 190 countries' police organization. So basically, Interpol will work police worldwide, and they'll gather data on criminals, suspects on the run. You know, they work together to try to find these people that are going internationally.
Anytime that somebody is charged with a crime, the next step is figuring out where they are to arrest them. Most violent crimes, people tend to be pretty local. If they've gone outside of Hampton Roads, they tend to have gone pretty far. But there are very rare instances where we think that the person may have left the country. I can tell you in going on 19 plus years as a state and federal prosecutor, this is only the second case where I've had to involve Interpol.
You know, a lot of times when local crimes happen, you know, you're looking, you know, throughout Hampton Roads, you're looking, you know, around Virginia State, like where these people are. But to have to pull in the international authorities and, you know, get them part of that, it's a whole nother process. So it's all this paperwork that you have to fill out to make the request. You know, so all of that is part of this whole effort and making everything so much more difficult. We do know the family told me that they were told that he had spent time while he was in the Navy in Asia, so he's a bit familiar with certain spots in Asia that he had been deployed to. So that was a little bit of insight into, you know, his connection, like why there, or like what, you know, the reasoning behind Hong Kong, you know.
That's interesting. So, and you spoke to Fatehi. I know you've spoken to him multiple times about this case. What happens if he gets to a place where they can't bring him back?
I mean, that's a huge problem. You know, they're hoping that that's not the case. And Ramin was very clear that he was not speaking about details of the case, the investigation, because ethically, as a prosecutor, he can't do that. So he didn't give any information like about the specifics of this case, but he could talk about using Interpol, the process of this whole process of bringing him back.
It is a complicated process. It's paperwork intensive, and it requires the cooperation of federal authorities and international authorities. Interpol is an international clearinghouse for over 190 countries' police organizations, and it is where we would file the information to say that we are looking for a particular person, what the charges are for which we are looking, and a request that if the local police organization in any Interpol country come to cross a particular suspect, that they alert the United States so that we can start the process of extraditing them.
I mean, it depends on the country. It depends on where he would be found, and the rules, and then, you know, different countries have different ways of handling this type of stuff. So if they're part of, you know, the treaty where they work together, that's like, okay, you know, it's much easier. It's still difficult. It's not like so simple. You still have to do like a lot of paperwork and finding him and all that stuff. But
Right.
when it's a country that is, you know, that just adds other levels of issues and efforts that have to be put. And it would depend on which country it would be, you know.
There are countries with various levels of freedom and different ideas about what constitutes a crime. And just like the United States doesn't want to be delegated to arresting people's political prisoners to be shipped home to be thrown in gulags, foreign countries vet our charges to make sure that our charges are consistent with their values.
Do you think that authorities here in the U.S., given that there are so many investigative authorities that are involved in this, again, we mentioned Homeland Security, NCIS, the FBI, is the CIA involved?
They don't normally tell people if they're involved or not. So
Sure, they probably
may
wouldn't.
be,
Right.
you know.
Could they like cut off access to bank accounts or something to make it harder for him to, you know, get money and do things like that? Is that part of
Oh, I'm sure,
a
yeah.
way that they could kind of, you know, force him to come out from hiding after a while?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of exactly what's going on, they're not sharing that, and I haven't been able to get it. But in these types of cases, my understanding is that, yeah, they can go to different ways of with getting the right approval of finding where these people are all tracking accounts, tracking this, you know, how much money did he have before he left, what was in his bank account before. We do know that his Tesla was found at the apartment complex when they were executing that search warrant. We also know that Lina's phone was found at the apartment complex. It didn't say anything about his phone, but I think that, you know, they were using that as a way to kind of track where he is. But yeah, it's very concerning. Like, how long was she in the freezer? When did this exactly happen? How did he get away? You know, they also talked about, you know, him being a reservist, and they worked with his superior officer to try to track him down. And it said in the documents that it was very unusual for him to not immediately answer phone calls. So when he started to, you know, get off the radar and nobody can find him, that was a huge, you know, red flag of what is going on with this? This is bizarre, you know?
So much of this hinges on their ability to capture him and bring him back potentially to face justice. To what lengths do you think they would go? You know, Interpol, international police are involved in this. What are the resources that could be dedicated to this international manhunt, right? Obviously, it's a very serious crime. It's a horrible atrocity that he's been accused of. But at what point do they just say, hey, you know, we're never going to find this guy. He's in a country that has more than 1 billion people, and it's going to be impossible.
I don't think they ever get to the point where they're like, we're never going to find him. I think after a certain amount of time, like we see, unfortunately, with so many cases, they turn cold, you know, less resources being put to them. Now, as to when that happens with this case, I hope it's not anytime soon. You know, I think that it's still very fresh. I think that there's a lot of people trying to find him. I know her family has been ordered to not speak to the media. I know that there is a huge effort on all these different agencies, like working together to try to, you know, bring him back here. And I know that that's what the family is wanting. They are just repeatedly telling me that they want justice. They are in shock. They are horrified by the details of what has been released and feel like he is a danger out on the streets in any country, in any environment that he is in, if the accusations against him are true.
All right. Well, we will be sure to update, you know, on air, online, if we do get more information, if they do find him as this investigation continues. But thank you for joining today on the podcast, and thank you for all for watching. We'll see you next time on True Crime 757.